Hey, I thought I would do, I think it was suggested in the Discord, and it's probably a good idea. So I thought I would do like a beginner's guide to everything. So I'll go pretty slow, and I'm going to try to cover like just everything for when it comes to making games. So this is a new scene, right? And I can create new scenes by going new scene or opening scenes. Of course, obviously save. You can grab these things and drag them around and organize them wherever you want. I for some reason I got in the habit of liking mine like this. Unity doesn't like this, and every now and then it pops up with a error when I'm trying to start the game saying I have to load default things or whatever, or I need to revert or something, and I hit that, then I hit quit, and I gotta reload it again, and then it pops up and it puts all my windows in some stupid format, and I just have to drag them all back. You know, several times later it does it again. Not a big deal. So we have a viewport, and of course we have your inspector, and then these two are your folders, your project, your assets, and whatever. And then you have whatever's actually in your scene under your hierarchy. So one of the very first things you ever want to do is go into project settings. And this thing's great. You can change all kinds of things in here. I would recommend taking a look at it. This is where you can change render pipelines and stuff. Your input manager. So this value here, this name, is what's called in the actions. These are alternates, and you can adjust these things. Like if you wanted to make, I don't know, we'll say go 31, so we get this guy, and you make this one, and you can make it, I don't know, attack, right? And you could give this whatever you want, and you can make it buttons. And if you want Xbox and stuff like that, if you search Google and look for button layouts on the controllers, it'll tell you what axes are what. Like I think on an Xbox, the left joystick is X and Y, but the right joystick is 4th and 5th. Right, but you have those, right? So you can adjust things. What else? You can set for different joysticks. You get motion from all joysticks, but you can do things like you can make this up as attack, right? And you can tell it whatever you want it to be. I don't know how else to really explain that. Package manager, well, we'll get into that after. Your physics matrix, this is your gravity, right? So in the world, if you turn gravity on something, it's going to fall at this rate, right? And you can adjust these. You can have gravity going any way you want. You can assign a default physical material, which is typically a good thing. When you get into things like this, query back faces and hit triggers, typically this is for like raycast and stuff. Like if you have, for example, if I create a plane, there's a plane and this is its face, but if I flip it, that's its back face. You can't see it. It's not rendered that way with that material, right? So you can have it so you can raycast and still hit this side. Queries hit triggers, so quite often that can be useful. if you're raycasting, but you don't need to use it. Contact generations, no, contact pair nodes. You can alter some things here, so you can get some different events happening from different things. And also, the matrix is quite useful. So if you have something like a player and they are on this layer, these are the things here and of course down here that the player layer can actually physically collide with. So you might have something that you want, you know, if you have, say, a zombie or something on this layer, and a player on this layer, you might not want the character to actually collide with the player. They can actually just walk right through each other. Right? You can still get data and stuff, but you know, you can adjust this. Quite useful. It's a common issue. Same thing, but 2D. Very first thing though, see lighting, how I'm on gamma. Now I'd change it, but I got a pile of assets and it would take too long for this video. Normally the very first thing you ever want to do when you start up a project, right at the start, take this, put it to linear. All your lighting, everything will look better. I don't know why gamma is the default. It's fucking horrendous looking. Everybody just uses linear. Change it to linear. Go with that. Everything looks better. The lighting looks better. Colors look better. Everything just looks better. Shadows react better. Some of this is more of the advanced stuff. Quality. We can adjust a few things. I find shadow cascades, if you want something realistic, you're going to want high cascades. If you're making something low poly, or you know, like photorealism isn't really a big deal for you, turn it off. Go no cascades. It's far better on performance the less cascades you have. And I could show you what that actually does. Like if I make a plane and then I make, we'll say a cube, and I could probably need a few cubes here. Might be enough to show it, we will see. So there's 4 cascades, and it's some LODs, but it more or less draws the shadows numerous times, and kind of a layering effect. Right, so as you can see, I mean, that's not the most accurate thing, and it's up in the air apparently. But yeah, that's what the cascades kind of do anyways. It almost looks nicer with none anyways, but none is way better on performance. Way better. Tags and layers, so if you got a bunch of tags and you want to get rid of some tags or add some tags, you can do it here. You can also just do it over here too though. You can add a layer, add a tag. Time step, probably best to not play with those until you really know what's going on. So that's kind of like just a basic on some of this stuff here anyways. Oh, actually, here's another one, build settings. So these are your scenes. So you can make all the scenes you want. Let's see, there's a pile of scenes, and I've made a pile because this is my tutorial project. So there's a whole lot of tutorial scenes. So really though, I mean, these are all here, but they don't technically do anything, and I could just literally just drag them and drop them in, and now they're part of my queue. So I can use actions like load scene at index 2 kind of idea. can right click to remove them, right? So, and then of course you can build and run and build. That's what else do we have? Some little things you can play with that. Really nothing special. So let's kind of come over here to the windows. You have Package Manager, and if you're using the newer Unity versions, then all of your assets that you buy also pop up in this little list here. But this is just a bunch of more or less assets from Unity that you can bring in, right? They're free. You just install them, right? So like there's a machine learning AI, not the simplest thing to deal with. I wouldn't just throw it in without knowing what you're doing. But you have things like Polybrush, which is great if you want to manipulate meshes and do stuff, build lands. Great for prototyping. Post-processing just makes everything look nicer. That's all I can say. It's a processing effect on top of your scene. ProBuilder, you can build stuff, build different boxes and stairs. ProGrids, I've got this one installed, and that's what this guy is. And that helps you snap things together in like grid-like fashion. You can turn it on and off. So that one's great. If you're using the non-standard render pipeline, like I'm in standard right now, but if you're not using that, you can use Shader Graph, which is a visual scripting tool for building shaders. Train tools, this has got some pretty neat things. You can do erosion and stuff like that in there. There's the render pipeline, universal. But there's a few things in there, and you can also preview packages if you want to see everything. But that's how we get some things in here. If you don't have the newer version, then you'll have a tab for the asset store, right? So you got your asset store. I can go look at my assets. I buy a billion things. I'll look around and see what's there, I suppose. Great way to get some stuff happening. That's obviously how you get PlayMaker and stuff in here. Assets, you can create assets. Folders for these, scripts, shaders. What else? You can create new materials, render textures, which are a neat little thing that you can. I'll show you what a render texture is. Here's a camera. And if I create, like you have this up here, you can go here, but you can also just right click. So I'm going to create a render texture. You can name it whatever you want. I can go to this camera and say, you know what, target texture, you're now going to this. So whatever this camera sees is now painting onto this texture. So that's what the texture looks like. So now I could create, say, some UI stuff, and not a panel, create a raw image right there. So anything UI goes into a canvas. The canvas is, like, if I take this out, you can't see it. It doesn't render. It has to be inside a canvas. But I can now take that render texture and drop it into my raw image, and I have whatever that camera's seeing in my UI. So that's kind of what a render texture is. And you can adjust these too, right? You can say, I want this to be, you know, super high res times 8. and it'll change the resolution of it. With that said, I mean, you could also go like really poor resolution too. So that's a canvas, right? These buttons are obviously your 2D to non-2D world. Lighting, non-lighting, different things. One of the big differences between when you start a project, you can start 2D or 3D. This is technically a 3D project, even though you can bring elements into both of them, 3D or 2D. With that said, if I create a 2D object, I will say a sprite of some type. All right, if I go to the sprite, you see, like, he's a 2D object, but he doesn't fit in the canvas. He's not a UI element. He's a 2D element. There's a little bit of a difference there. And if I put a, oh, not a 3D box collider. If I put a box collider on him, he has this little green edge, and that's where collisions happen. Now, this is one of the differences between 3D and 2D projects. In a 3D project, I can now get collisions this way coming in, but I can also get things going in through the middle. 2D projects, I can't. It's their physics engine or whatever modifies, and it takes away a lot of the stuff that you don't get that. And it's for performance reasons. So just kind of keep that in mind. It will play in a role at some point in time, I'm sure. So what else can we do? You can create all kinds of things. You have your primitives. This is ProBuilder. I got it installed. I might as well show you it real quick. This cube. Where's my ProBuilder window? Right, and I can take that and dock that. Like, I can make a new plane. I can make new anything. I can make a door. There's my door. There's my door. And it's like a pre-built door. Let's turn off lighting so we don't see the shadows. But yeah, I don't know. There's a bunch of things you can kind of just make with ProBuilder. You know, pipes. What else? There's stairs somewhere around here. Sprites, apparently. I didn't know you could build sprites with it, but apparently you can. Sphere, torus, stairs. Yeah, so you can also build things like stairs. Right, and then, of course, they're fully adjustable. Right, so then you can also add a curvature. Ooh. Right. Mirror it. So if you wanted to prototype some levels, you just hit build. Get rid of that. So now I literally have just an object now. But I still have this ProBuilder window up. I can now, I can have snapping on apparently. Right, but you can play with things, adjust things all you want. A bit of a modeling system, I guess. It's useful. I mean, it's not the greatest modeling system in the world, but it is useful, especially if you want quick prototyping. You can do all kinds of stuff. And then if you want to see what I don't have the polybrush in here. The polybrush is literally a brush that you can brush with models as well, like raise all the vertices and stuff. Like it's almost like it's the same idea as if I go and create a terrain and I go and do stuff like this, right? This is kind of like what Polybrush does, but to meshes, to any mesh. You can just stick it on a mesh, and then you can do things like this to that mesh with Polybrush. Right, so that's kind of what that does. So anyways, so carrying on, what else can we do? Components. Everything in Unity runs on components, which is where PlayMaker kind of comes in. PlayMaker is a component, right? So if I find a character, and we bring the character and we stuff her in the scene, she has components on her, and that's how she exists. Right now it has an animator here, doesn't really matter when she's not animated. She has a transform, and you'll find that everything here has transforms. And what a transform is it gives the object a world space coordinates. So if it doesn't have a transform, it doesn't have a world space position or rotation. Like, it just doesn't exist in that aspect. But that's all it does, right? It deals just with world space position. And if you look at something like, well, if you go to its root, if I go to this, it's the rendering component. So this is what gives this object its shape and stuff, right? Then it has materials in that. And there's a skinned mesh renderer. And then if you look on something like a cube, it's got a mesh renderer. There's a difference. Skinned mesh are bendable, flexible, can do things with them. A mesh renderer, you can't, per se. But these are better on performance. But you have, on this one, you have a mesh filter, which is like its structure, I guess you could say. Then you have its how it looks render-wise, and you can change materials, make it anything you want. And then you have a collider. So this is your more or less your physical properties. This thing has a physical edge, and I can turn that off, and now this thing is there, but you can't collide with it. You can't interact with it. It's like a ghost. You can also make it as a trigger, which is also kind of like a ghost, but now it can give you special events saying that, you know, something's gone in it, like trigger zones. So that's kind of some basic stuff there. One thing we should probably look at, I'm going to close this window and go over to my mechanic, and I'm going to revert that animator. I don't know why this is acting all up. Is I can now bring up an animator window. I want to put down here. So this animator, which technically there is none. So say I put an animator on there, which apparently I have. Oh, there it is. Right, I have different things now, right? Different animations. So these are each animations. Wow. This one's actually got a blend tree, but okay, won't get into that. So these are different animations, and you can build different layers in an animation, and everything plays kind of in this upwards fashion on top of each other, and you can adjust weights. You can adjust mass, so like maybe this layer only plays the upper body, right, with this mask. And this one would play the lower body. Well, it'd be trying to play everything, but the upper body would override the upper body portion of it. So this is kind of like an FSM PlayMaker style. state machine, right? You have a little arrow, so we're in this state, and you can travel and you can go, and it has these transitions, and you can right click and make transitions and go anywhere you want. And you click on a transition, and you can have various settings. Has exit time, so this animation plays. When it's done, at this stage it fades in to the next one, plays the whole way. If I turn this off, it wants to do it instantly, well, pretty much instantly. But if I turn it off, you can see it wants a condition now. So I can say, okay, well, your speed, or say you get a trigger called hurt, then just start this transition, but don't start it until you get this command. It'll just repeat this one until we got the command, off it goes. So you can do various things just with these conditions, right? And you can go to the parameters. You can see I've got some parameters here. You can add different ones. So my locomotion, it's just blend trees. It's probably not the best to show you, but it's a blend tree. Like say just this portion here, we have an idle, walk, and run forward, and it's blending based on a parameter called speed. If I hit play, right, it's in the idle because it's at 0, and if I start moving this up, it starts to blend over to do a walk going into a run, right? And I can go back and forth, and you see that these highlight, right? And if I click on this guy, I got the same thing, but now I have speed, but I also made this one called aggression, and that was, so they're holding a weapon idly, and this is they're idly just standing there holding weapon, right? And this one is controlling which tree to use, and then this guy is controlling where on the tree to use. So with them both up, we're in this tree and we're down here. And if I move this up, and we're now in this tree, but we're down here, right? And that's kind of how blend trees sort of work there. You can use any state, so condition from any state, like I have one going to death. If I click on it, if I get the trigger death, doesn't matter where we are in this tree, we're going to go ba-doop and going to death. And one of the other things you might see is, for example, under settings, you can adjust these durations. So lots of times, like say if you have a hurt, if you take that to 0, as soon as this is called, that frame, man, it's going, it's now, right? So sometimes if you have a delay in your animations, and you don't want that blend, just cut that time down or turn it to 0 or whatever the case may be. And the other thing is useful is this can transition to self. So I'll show you something. We'll make a bool. I'll just call this demo, and I'm going to go to death, and we're going to take this to demo, and if it's true, we're going to go to this state. So now if I hit play, this person's standing idly, eventually. Oh, there we go. And of course there's no camera, so that's okay, we're not using a camera. All right, so they're standing idle. Now if I flick this bool true, she dies. Just like that. Falls over. Right? Now if I actually move this, it resets everything. Bit of a trade secret there. Now, if this is ticked, I had it unticked. If I turn this on, and this is normally how it is by default, as you can see, you get this repeating action because it wants to go. So can transition to self. So if I'm already playing this, don't do it, right? Just do it once, just like that. Right, so, and then we'll show you this thing. So if I put in this, we'll crank it up. If I put in 1, see how it's got this really crappy, you know, if I bring it down, maybe adjust these. Again, it's not, I mean, it feels pretty quick, but it's not. It's, and if I set this to 0, it's like now, it's just going. Which is also kind of a good thing, is if you look at this, actually here, we'll do this. If I say make a transition, okay, these are 2 blend trees. Let's grab one of our animations. Actually, it's almost better to do with this with attacks. So say we take an animation, and you can literally just drag them and drop them in here. So, I'll show you something with this. Transitions from here. If I click here and go to the preview, I know kind of expand this out. So we have the first animation that then it transitions into this animation. And if I scrub along this, I can see the first animation playing, and then it kind of goes into the second animation. Now I can adjust this thing. I can do the length of the blend, right? So it comes over and does that, and all of a sudden it's doing this other one, right? Because it had a very short blend, right? Where I can, yeah, see how it's kind of this weird, all of a sudden kind of a double thing. So this is really great for when you want to do combos and you want to time things, right? So the person, like they come down, they do the swing, and then they pull them back, and almost kind of going idle, and then you're doing another swing. So you'd almost want to take this and move it over. So we come down, we hit pretty much right there. We want to start blending in. So we come down, we hit, we come back up, and we hit again, right? It's a nice smooth boom, boom, right? So you can adjust these to make that blend better for you if you wish. So there's some stuff about the Animator it's such a common thing. I figured I better kind of cover that. So let's get rid of this so we can actually see. Get the camera going again. Obviously my lighting is very harsh. Often I like to take this down off of 1. Actually, I usually sit about 0.95. It didn't seem to make that much of a difference, but it does. Your shadows aren't quite as hard. The other thing you can do is under rendering, light settings. I usually drag this over here. You can adjust various things. So there's our sun, and I can move it, and you see our sun actually spins, ties in with setting that. Environmental lighting, right? You can use a skybox for the lighting, or you can just go with a gradient color, or just a color. Environmental reflections. If you want reflections, like if you have, let's look at something on her. All right, if I hide that, okay, say hit her shoulder pad, we'll say. this has a material, and it's not really metallic. I'm gonna, oh, her whole body's metallic. Okay, well, whatever. We will show you. Right, so we have this kind of a weird metallic person all of a sudden, but I can now create, and I'm going to click into the world here and create a, under light, a reflection probe. Game object, move to view. I have this weird thing that is weird. Set it to real time, and now it's taking this area around it. You see this little fainted area, collecting data for light, and it goes to materials, and it says, okay, this is how we need to reflect, right? So now the metal that I made her looks a lot better, right, compared to that, right? Like she's got this metal shine to it. It just, things don't quite look right. You add a reflection probe, and it looks a lot better. It works great on things like water and so forth. You know, I wouldn't recommend cranking these up to some ridiculous size. That's a lot of calculations to be trying to do. I'm going to do it anyways, because why not? So that's how reflection probes work, though. And if I said they work great on water, right? So if I have water, do I have a water material? Kinda. I don't think it's the most reflective of water. A little bit. Wow. Normally, I mean, if you have water, like if you actually have a good water asset, then you'll see sky and clouds and stuff reflecting. I mean, I don't. Mine's just blue. I don't have anything. Which reminds me, you can change your skybox, right? Do all sorts of neat stuff. That one's pretty crazy. Go to a nice one. Now, lots of times when you do those, though, depending on the skybox, they won't have necessarily the ability to move this sun, right? Like you can move it, and the lighting changes. But see, like I don't have a sun floating around here anymore. It's not there. In this skybox, it's always there. Right? Doesn't matter where I put this. And that's the actual skybox itself. The one with the sun moving is actually a special sky shader that does that. So just be aware of that. But on the reflections, I mean, that's not a good thing for reflections, I suppose, but cube mat 1. If I make that all the way see, that one's trying to be reflective. Let's put this down to, oh, whoops. Let's move that back over here. There we go. See, as you see now I actually got a bit of a sky happening. It's actually reflecting. Right, and even still, I could shrink that some more too. right? Yeah, so now we have this weird thing. See a bit of the character in there. So reflection probes are really cool. Do all sorts of stuff. You can also bake them. So what else do we have before we get into PlayMaker stuff? I won't cover too much of this kind of odd stuff. This AI window navigation is also important. That's how we bake things for AI. Let's get rid of some of this stuff. And get rid of that. Right, so if I take this plane and I need to mark it static, so the system knows it can't move. So in play mode it won't move. And now I can turn around and say, we need to bake. No. Okay, it tells me I want to save the scene. Oh my god, I can't spell. Right, so now it paints this blue area, and that's for AI for pathing. They find areas. This is like an AI can't see things, you know, unless you program it to. Right, if I put this box here and I mark it as static and I rebake all this, as you see, like it kind of takes it out. So the AI, because the AI can't see the box for when it's trying to do its pathing. So if you have the AI here and he wants to go over here, he now knows though, because of the navigational mesh, that he needs to find the shortest path around. And so it kind of gives the appearance that he does see the box, even though in reality he doesn't. He has no idea that this box is here or what it is or how it works or anything to do with it. He'll walk right through it. So then the navigation mesh kind of tells him where he can and can't walk. And like you can adjust various things on it, right? If I rebake it, it shrinks it down so it's a lot closer to it. I can do jump distances and drop heights. Now I can bake that. Oh, I didn't want to bake it for me. I think we need to make the box bigger. Let's see, yeah. So now we have these jump heights and drops. And that's what these little markers here are. So this may not be painted blue, but if your AI wants to get up here, previously he wouldn't be able to do it. He'd be like, I can't. Like I can go here and then it breaks and there's no way up here. But with these little markers, and that's what these drop height jump distances do, it gives your AI the ability that he can literally hit to here and then he actually kind of flies through the air and lands there. And you can get readouts on that, so while that's happening you can tell him to be playing a jump animation, right? And he can actually be jumping up and down on stuff. So that's that. So let's create something. Anything else for performance? I'll tell you right now, lighting is absolutely devastating. So lighting, if I bring that up, oh, I can't have that. Let's put it down here. Game object, align with view. All right, so for example, I'll put a couple boxes here, okay? I'll show you this real quick because this is a killer. this actually over here. Let's make them, now let's make them red, make them a real intense light, even expand his range out, give him soft shadows, and apparently he needs to come up. All right, so if I now duplicate this and I want a couple lights, every time a light is hit something, it's going to make a shadow, it hits a mesh, whatever the case may be, graphics wise, CPU wise, everything has to be rendered for each light hitting it, right? So right now my batches feeding off, going over kind of in clusters, and my calls to my GPU are, you know, climbing all as is. We haven't really done anything yet, and it's because I put a bunch of point lights here, because I have to draw these cubes for each light, right? And if I drop these down, we're just using the directional light, see how those all just dropped right down. So each time I'm using a light, like even my triangles, everything's climbing, and it just is a building system. It just goes and goes and goes. So lights can be absolutely devastating. I can try to run deferred, it'll help it a bit to some degree, but not entirely. $280 batches, almost 100 set calls. Yikes. All right, so careful with lighting. Now, with that said, we can technically, I can make these off from real time and go baked. Right now they're still acting like they're real time. Let's get rid of that person real quick. We have nothing else in the scene, it's just these objects. So but now these all have to be static. And you can change that so that they're static in the ways for occlusion calling, batching, navigation for the AI, reflection probes, lighting. So everything's static, right? These lights are here, we're, you know, up there. I can now go to lighting technically, if I wanted to, and say, where are we? We can bake lighting. There's all sorts of things you can adjust on this too. Right, and it's looking all ugly. It's trying to build textures. It more or less has to try to build the textures and places the textures in a special component on these objects when it's all done. But as you see, it's kind of this ugly thing so far, and it will clear up. Right, so now it's done. So these lighting now, they're not the same. Like they're there, but now they're not doing anything. So these things are all now baked. The lighting is now baked on these things, right? So as you see, like the calls and all that, if I now turn them off, it's like they still have that lighting. So that's kind of what that system does. I can bake the lighting on there. Not very good if you want like daytime going to nighttime and so forth. But with that said, he's permanently baked with that lighting on him regardless where I move him now too. Right? But that's his textures. He has this new baked light map on him. but you can improve performance dramatically with doing that. So I just thought I'd show you that anyways. Let's get rid of all that. Don't need any of that crap. So let's create I'll put another terrain down, I suppose. I don't know why my mouse decided to lock up there, but whatever. All right. And make sure that's all normal. And yeah, that's fine. All right, so let's create. Actually, you know what? That train is gonna drive me nuts. Oh, let's paint texture. So we need to add a layer. I'm just gonna add whatever layer I happen to have. Sure, that will work. Some mud layer, sure. So let's look at PlayMaker. Here we have now a cube. Alright, whatever. I don't know why my cube looks kind of funny all of a sudden. So, if I want to use PlayMaker on this thing, I need to add a component. Like the rest of these components that all do something, it needs a component. So I can use FSM. I can give it a PlayMaker FSM. So this is essentially a script. A script holding scripts that run scripts. So here we have our window. Why is that still doing something stupid? Okay. So this is our PlayMaker window, and you can take this and you can dock this somewhere if you want. I usually don't for some reason. Now in this we have various tabs. We have the FSM of what it is, reset state on disable, reset the variables. What else? We have the states, which is what this is. This is kind of what talk about this graph. We have events. We have variables. So variables are literally just numbers, words, and true or false statements, pretty much, and vectors. So you can make them whatever you want. Like for example, we can make one, and we can name it speed, right? And maybe it's 5, sure. So now we have a float variable of 5. We can make an event, and you can name these whatever you want to name these things, right? Let's call it, oh, I hit the caps locks. Let's call it cat. Oh yeah, so our start, this is where we're starting. Now, what if we get key down? We can choose a key. Let's hit space. We're going to send an event. So actions run top to bottom. So this one's going to run all the time, and it's just going to monitor until this key is pressed. When it is, it runs this event. If you want, you can also store the result. Typically we don't do that, but you can. So get key down. So what event do we want it to fire, right? And you can use system events. I'll get into those a little after. UI events, or custom events that I've made. And in this case, I'm going to use cat because that's what we made. Okay, event is not used by an state. I'm just going to turn that on. It pops it down here. And or vice versa, if you wanted to just add a transition, you can add cat. You can also do that. So cat, and I hold down Control after I've dragged it out, let go, and I create state 2. Or you can just add state. You can also hold down Control and click on it, and it automatically builds the finished. But I'm not going to worry about that. So that's very, very simple. All we're doing is get key down. Oh, let's reopen that back up so we can see it. Oh, we're going to put this up here so we can click in here. And I guess technically nothing actually happens. Okay, so get key down space, we set an event. So if I'm going to hit space bar, I hit space bar, we go over to this state. We're now in here, and we can do stuff, right? So I could say do 2 states. Let's also get, I don't know, say tab. We'll call this one dog. And I'm going to drag this one out, and I'm just going to do an add finished. And that's a special one that just kind of runs through it and then runs wherever you want to send it. So I'm just going to send it back. So I hit play. We're sitting in here. It's monitoring both of those. If I hit tab, oh, I gotta make sure we're clicked on the window. As you see, this thing lights up because it's going that direction. It goes that direction, it comes back. So I can hit tab all I want. I'm just running down that line. I hit space and I go down that line. So now all of a sudden we have this method that we can do stuff. So let's go over to this cube. And let's do stuff to this cube, right? Let's keep those. Let's keep the space in the tab. So here, what do we want to do with this cube? And you can run through and you can do all sorts of different things. So I am going to say, what about, let's go to its transform, which does all the motions, and let's, translate it, so we're going to move it. So space self and space world. I'll explain that real quick. So in the world, up here, that's your Z. That's the world Z. And that's the same way he's facing, right? And I can flop it up here. Now, if I take this guy and rotate him, his Z is now this direction. The world Z is still going this direction, right? That's that direction. But his Z is going this direction. So this is his Z, and this is the world Z. And that's what this button does here. I can flop it and say, I want to see the world Z, just that direction. I want to see my local Z, which goes this direction. So when you look at certain actions such as translate, space self is using his space. Space world is using the world space. So on space self, let's say if we hit the space bar, we go to this guy, let's move up 1 unit. Then we'll finish and go back. And if we hit the tab, I'm going to copy, paste. Now let's go down half. Actually, let's go down 0.2 per second. Mark that as every frame. And let's add a wait for 5 seconds to a finished, which goes back here. Okay, so now if I bring the camera over so we can watch him, I'm just going to say align with view when I have the camera selected. So we're here. So if I hit, now we're in play, if I hit the space bar, he climbed up that one full unit, right? And I can just keep hitting that. If I hit tab, oh, whoops, I went the wrong direction. Of course, I'm going +2. I can go -0.2. Right, and it plays that wait time, and then it finishes it and goes back. Just like that. Now I changed this guy while we're in play mode. If I come out of play mode, he changes back. So don't make changes while you're in play mode because they won't bother to actually save. You know, unless you're just testing stuff. Okay, so let's set up something. Let's go create another cube, drag it over here. Let's give him a different material. Let's make him the yellow. And I'm going to turn his collider to a trigger. And I'm going to make him much bigger. So this cube is now a trigger. So we have things, all right? So we have this. Actually, I'll probably just leave this one alone. Let's add another FSM. Let's call this one trigger event. And if I go into this guy, right, it's a new graph, right? I still have both of them. And this guy, I could use the trigger action, right? There's a trigger event here. And I can use different triggers, trigger enter, trigger we're staying in the trigger, or trigger we have exited the trigger. And I can also control it by tag. And I can store whatever I hit as a trigger. Alternatively, if I add a state and I want to use a global transition and use a system event, these are built-in events from Unity that we're tapping into. So for example, I could do mouse over. Now if I hit play, I move my mouse over and you see it's lighting up every frame. Just like that. Doop, ba-doop, ba-doop. Now that happens through having this guy, B, this event system. This is what links UI and mouse inputs to this world. So make sure you have those two in the scene. They should be put in there automatically, but if you don't have them, you can go UI event system. Okay, so let's get rid of this one. Let's use another system event. Well, actually I can show you this one. And let's do another one. System became visible. I'm going to pull this guy out like this, so I can just drag it around now. I'm going to hit play. And I'm going to take this, not that cube, this cube that has these on it, and I'm going to move them, and he has left the screen. He's become invisible. He's become visible again. invisible, visible. Right, so there's various things you can do with these system events, which are great. They're really, really handy. So let's do on trigger enter. Now, when I do this one's technically not going to work. And we'll get in detail on why. So on trigger enter. And if I take him, I put him in, nothing happens. Not triggering nothing. And that's because in order to use, now let's double this guy up. Let's make 2 of them. Only this one's not going to be a trigger. So in order for this guy to have this kind of stuff, I'm going to make another one of these system events for collision enter. Is we need what's called a rigid body. And that's what deals with physics and colliding with stuff when it comes to the callbacks. So I don't want to use gravity, right? I don't feel like having my, like if I just leave it like that, he's gonna fall, right? And I don't want that. I'm gonna have him as kinetic. So with that said, if I now hit play, here we have a trigger, and now that I have a rigid body, the rigid body can actually trigger that. And now he's hit the trigger, right? Every time I enter it, he can do stuff. Alternatively, now that I've got a rigid body and he isn't marked trigger, he is a physical object, I can now get a collision event. I can't get a collision event with the trigger, but I can get a trigger event. Collision, trigger, right? And if I go to this guy and I add a rigid body to him, let's put him on continuous, dynamic, so it's more accurate. Right, so now I can get triggers, and I can now literally push this guy around. And every time I touch him, I'm still getting that event down here. Right? Stupid box, go away. You're not welcome here anymore. Right? So there's my 2 kind of events. Now, with that said, you can do things with that. So, for example, let's add an FSM to this guy. And with him, let's use a trigger action this time, just to mix things up, not for any particular reason. I'm going to use the tag player, so I'm going to take this guy and change his tag to player. Tags are just a way to help identify things. They don't technically do anything, they're just an identification. So we have hit the player. So sure, let's add that event. And the other thing we want is we want to store the hit object. Now when we get to here, let's scale, set scale of, not the owner, but of the hit object. Let's scale him to 0.25 across the board, and then we'll finish and go back. Alternatively, when we get to this guy, let's add an FSM. Now he's not using a trigger though, he's using a collision. So let's get a collision event. On collision enter, with player, send event, we are going to hit the player. Ba-doop. And we also need to store, so let's store the player or hit object. You can also store the force, I'm not worried about that right now. And then over here, let's set scale again of the player, and let's go make them real big. Then we'll finish and go back. Okay, so now we have, if I hit this guy, I've shrunk. I tap this guy, I've gotten really big. Just like that. And that's one way we can try to communicate with things. And this is a very, very key thing here, is the fact that we're storing whatever we're hit, and then we're doing logic to what we hit, right? A lot of people will drag this in like that. That is a horrible, horrible, horrible method to do. It will lead you to issues. It's common. Everyone does it. I did the same thing. Don't do it. Use variables. And I'll show you why. I can now duplicate this guy. I now have 3 of them. I can now take this guy, hit him, take this guy, tap that, this guy, hit him, tap that. It doesn't matter which one I grab. All of these guys, their logic is functional in the ways that they react to what's hitting them and not to a specific object. And what you see lots of times is this. Like I said, like it's the scale, right? And this is kind of what happens, right? They'll drag that in, and this is one of the problems. Is now I'm scaling him down. I don't want him scaled down. I want him to scale upwards, right? It works fine when I'm just using him, but all of a sudden something comes along here, and it's messes that up, right? So you want to use variables. Variables are very, very important. The other thing is, I'll show you this thing, is say, let's duplicate him. If he, say, is using that cube, and I want to make a bunch of these things, I'm going to put them in different levels, I'm going to do something with them. I'm going to drag him over here. This guy here, he's a prefab now. I've just literally made a prefab of him. Prefabs cannot reference scene objects. So if I bring him out now and I open his logic up, that reference is gone. It's empty. Nothing there. So this won't work. Right? So that's why, well, that's also another reason why it's very important to use these, because I can drag this one in, and then I can delete this guy, and I can pull him out, and I can hit play, and they all still work. Just like that. Right, so there's that. So that's just kind of one example, and that's kind of triggers. We're dealing with rigid bodies, and we're collecting variables. Okay, so what about something like, say this guy has health, we'll say. Oh, okay, how about another guy? He's a prefab. I have to break the prefab. So this guy, he has health. So instead of setting scale, well, I mean, we can do that too. Let's int subtract, or you can add. Maybe we're adding points, right? Let's make a new variable. We'll call it health, right? So you can go over here and you can see health. We'll say 50. And you can use these things so you can see it out here. And we're going to subtract, I don't know, say 5. So now if I if you keep an eye on this guy, I gotta lock that. So we hold this while I grab something else. And if I tap him, he went down 5. I can keep tapping him and he'll keep subtracting 5 every time I tap him. So here's something a little different, a little more communication for it, is what if, let's unbreak that. Let's get rid of, say, these guys. And let's add an FSM, and we'll call this one stuff. And in it, we have an integer called damage, and it's 8. Now, this guy, instead of just subtracting 5, we're taking the reference from this, right? So over here, let's get FSM integer. We're taking the integer from something, right? We're taking the integer from whatever we hit. The FSM name was stuff, and the variable name was damage. And we're going to store that in our own variable, and we'll also call that one damage. It doesn't have to be. And we could subtract damage, which right now is 0. So this little guy has the number 8, this guy has 50, and if I hit, oh, let's go like this, we can see it, watch it live, it went down by 8. So as you see in this logic, it grabbed the player, it grabbed that integer, and it's subtracting its health by that integer. Right? And that's, one thing we can do. You could also do int compare, and if health is, say, I don't know, less than 20, do stuff. If it's equal, we'll also do stuff. If it's greater than, do other stuff. All right, so I'm going to get rid of the finish. So other stuff will go over here. Do stuff is, let's destroy self. Now, I take this guy and let's look at him. Take this cube and smack this cube around a bit. And if he gets below 10, he should destroy himself, or if he's equal to 10, right? Bam, he's gone. Doesn't exist anymore. We've destroyed him. So there's a bunch of things there that you can deal with. The other thing is you can make an event. We'll call it hi you guys, and I'm going to make it a global like this. And on this guy, let's also send event. This is a great way to make sure to put it before the destroy. If you destroy it and then try to send it, it's not going to work. So we're going to send an event to our hit object, to the FSM stuff, and it was under H's. Hit H a bunch of times. Hi, you guys. There we go. So if I now say open up this guy and hit play, I'll take, so this guy's taking that same variable from the cube I'm holding and subtracting it, and now he said hi you guys, he fired it back. So that's kind of neat. And there's a lot of different things. You can chain these things together until the cows come home. right? Let's go like this. So the canvas comes automatically. Now we have a text. Let's go to our text. Let's go to 2D. Let's stick them, I don't know, say about here. I'm going to change the canvas to scale with screen size. So now it should always be in the same spot. Take this guy, anchor him to the top middle, and we'll tell him to always kind of be like that. And let's stick him actually closer in the middle. Right, because now, like I said, now if I shrink this down, he's always going to hold that position. Doesn't matter what I do with this various things. Just works. Okay, so what if I'm going to take this one as icon, just because. And this guy, let's put a starting state over here. And he is going to find object, and the object name is text, because I haven't named it, but I gave it the tag as icon, and this is our text. So we found the object in the beginning. Now that we have the reference to that, in here, let's UI text set text. Put this above the compare, or else when the logic hits the compare, it'll never go below that, because this thing can't fail. We want to use our text, and let's convert our health. Okay, so now I got to go back into that mode, grab him, and I tap him. I got 42. Tap him, 34. Ba-doop, ba-doop, ba-doo. There you go. So there's a lot of things that we can do in that aspect. I think one more thing I should probably show before this video is too insanely long. Let's go like this. Let's create 2 objects, 3 objects, 4 objects. Scale this guy up. Say 3, 2, 2. All right, that works. Actually, let's take him down to 1. So I take all these objects. I'm going to create an empty, drag it out, drag all these things into this object, make this our robot. As a child of the cubes, I'm going to add a animator. Make sure it's an animator, not animation. The animation component, this guy, is a legacy system. It still works. I just find it to be archaic. So let's make an animator controller, call it our robot. Let's stick it in here. So this guy is a generic style thing. Now I can go animations and put this guy, say, down here, and go create. We'll say idle. And when we're idle, I am just going to hit record and just move them, add another key. That's his idle. And I'm going to create a walk, save, record. So we want, say, this guy and this guy to be here, but we want, say, this guy and this guy. So let's rotate it. Now if I go like this, I don't want to do that, but we can go like that. Oh, no, apparently that's being silly. Okay, well, whatever. Actually, you know what? No, we're good. Okay, so let's go move him. You see his scale's getting all wonky. So let's actually fix that real quick. That's because his scale is wonky. So let's create another one actually. And his scale, put his scale to 1. Let's stick him in there. Let's just redo that. There we go. And I'm going to take all these. So that's upper. Make a bit of a hierarchy here. Okay. So add animator, drag that back in, remove all these because we've changed a few things, and record. And I'm going to grab everything, make sure everything is just still. Okay. Come over here and key in, stop recording, and we'll use a walk. Let's get rid of these. Hit record, and now I'm going to take this guy. Just rotate him like that. And this guy can be back a bit. We'll go over, say roughly 1 second. And we'll take him like that. Move him around. And take this guy. And this is how you can kind of do a little bit of basic animations. You don't want to do this too much, I suppose, but in a way though, it is satisfying. Let's spin this guy a little bit. All right. So you can make little animations for generic. You can't do it with humanoids in Unity, but you can do it with generic. So is walk false? If I go to this guy, I should be able to loop pose. So now if I hit true, he just starts doing this weird funky thing. Turn it off, go still. This can be controlled by, you guessed it, PlayMaker. Let's say get mouse button down, left, we clicked, and set animator bool. We should have this to walk. Let's go true. I'm also going to copy this guy and paste it in this one above it, but false. And then over here, get mouse button up, or I can do down again, I guess. And you can reuse that event. It's not a big deal. And don't do it if they're global, because it'll try to fire them both. All right, so now we have, I click and hold the mouse button. I let go of the mouse button. Click, let go. There we go. So, I don't know what else I should cover. Possibly one more thing would be another great tool is a thing called Raycasting. Add FSM Raycast, and Raycast is like a laser. I almost dislike the term of it being used as a laser though, because it's not. It kind of defines or defies time. Like it's instant, right? Like anytime you think of a laser, you're going from point A to point B, even if it's super fast. Where this is, it's happening technically at once. Anyways, I'm going to give it a direction. I'm going to shoot down space of myself, not the world, at a distance of 5 units. And I want we can say the hit point. I can get the hit object. That's pretty good. I'm going to turn on debugging. And if I hit play, what we see is this little yellow line. And that is our raycast. We can see our raycast shooting down and hitting that terrain. And that's what it's telling us. It's hitting the terrain, it's hitting it here. And if I move, you'll see that this vector is changing. Which is great if you want to use it for, say, guns. Right? You raycast where your bullets are going to go. So you shoot your gun, you can raycast and find those positions that you're hitting. Right? Also great to check if you are, say, on the ground. Oh, not quite long enough. Right? So great for if you wanted to say, like, if you want to tell if your character is on the ground. Great little method is is hitting. Right now it's false. Now it's true. False, true, false, true. Right? So it's just a beautiful way to collect data, I guess you could say. Raycast, they're used in a lot of different things. Of course, they are a little more performance heavy, but don't worry about it. Especially if you're just learning, don't worry about that kind of crap. Just play and do what you can, do what you want, more or less. We'll worry about the performance of things later. Right now, a lot of people, when they first get going, they want to build some big, massive game. They get this grand idea, and they're going to there's a lot of things like this they don't know, and they just like everyone else that does this, and they just bury themselves. Don't do that. You probably will anyways, but don't do that. You know, learn and play and learn the tricks first. But anyways, hopefully this has helped some people. I don't know if I should do much else to it. I mean, I could run through different actions, I suppose. Right, because there's an entire action browser riddled with stuff that you can do all sorts of things with. But I would encourage you to take the time. You can always ask about them, and lots of these things, like when you read them, you can get the idea of what they do. They'll typically tell you. And there's some pretty intimidating stuff, no doubt. One of the greatest tools you could ever have, if you go to the welcome screen, I believe under add-ons, go to the wiki, whatever, it'll take you, or if this is here, click on that. The ecosystem is this thing, and it's riddled with actions. Right, actions and actions and actions and actions, tons of actions people make, actions for like pathfinding. This is all AI stuff, how to move AI and stuff like that, how to control the AI. You can filter, go to packages. Right, these are full packages, so there's numerous actions. PlayMaker, Pun 2, so there's a whole whack of actions that are all related to Pun 2. Pooler for a pooling system. There's TextMesh Pro, or one of them. There's also one of these on the site, and I think they're different. This one actually I think has issues. For camera system. What else we got? It said AI. Raymaker, Easy Save 3. It's also one of the other big popular ones is Raymaker, just in general, arrays, big lists of objects. I won't get into that right now. So hopefully you guys have learned something from this video. Just trying to cover some basics and stuff, and we'll see you guys later.